Welcome back to my channel. I'm James. Today we're going to be reviewing, discussing, testing, and analyzing 4 big 4K Ultra HD releases. And these are some different titles from a bunch of different genres. We've got romantic comedies, sci-fi, classic movies, comedies, family movies, and we've got fantasy comedies, just kind of all different genres in this video that's going to really entertain and interest everybody. Now, I'm excited to announce we're going to deep dive into Puss in Boots on 4K Ultra HD, Invaders from Mars, the brand new 4K Ultra HD release, the 25th anniversary 4K Ultra HD release of My Best Friend's Wedding, and the brand new 4K Ultra HD release from Criterion Collection of The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. And this is one of those fantasy comedies that a lot of people just don't know about that we're going to dive into as well. Starting off with, we're going to be touching on Puss in Boots here on 4K Ultra HD. Now, as always, the image presentations that are above are always pulled directly from the 4K disc. So these are the native images pulled directly from these discs without all the artificial things your TV or player can do to kind of boost up color saturation or try to change the contrast or things like that. These are always the native images present on each and every one of these discs. Now, with Puss in Boots, it was a similar experience to something that I recently reviewed with Shrek 2. A lot of the things in my Shrek 2 review are similar in some areas to what this Puss in Boots had. Now, there are obviously things that are different because this was a much later on release. Obviously, Puss in Boots came out in 2011. So the CGI and computer effects technology had advanced quite a bit since even when Shrek 2 had originally come out. So that is what lends to what's on this 4K that drastically changes it slightly differently than some of the things that the Shrek 2 had on it. Now, if you want a more detailed explanation, diving into more about the CGI from that era, I did a lot of that explanation about how the CGI was done and how it works in these types of 4K releases of animated films like this. In that Shrek 2 review, I give a very detailed explanation, giving you all of the more kind of detailed behind the scenes of how the CGI was done for these types of films. So if you want to know more about that, make sure to go watch and check out my Shrek 2 review. On Puss in Boots, though, there was some things that I did like that kind of seemed to be a little bit more improved than what I found out on that Shrek 2. Now, with Puss in Boots, this is an upscaled 4K from a 2K digital intermediate. Now, like I talked about, and I'm going to reference that Shrek 2 review a bit here, but this is actually from a 2K digital intermediate. All of the computer graphics and CGI, the highest resolution that it was finished at is a 2K. So in this sense, it's not something that they can go back unless they were to redo all of the special effects and all of the CGI for the entire movie, which is completely computer generated. They would have to redo the entire thing, which costs millions and millions of dollars, which they're never going to do. So for a CGI'd film, they can only take so much of the data, upscale it to 4K, and that is why I believe this is the best version of Puss in Boots we're ever going to get. Image-wise, it does have HDR10, and it does lend really well to the details and the depth to the image over the previous Blu Ray release that came out in 2012. You'll notice so much more of the details on like the cat and things like that, Puss obviously. As you're noticing those images above, you can see so much of their fur more detailed because again, this is pulling the most data from the CGI that it possibly can to show us the most that you can possibly see in this 4K presentation. And I do really think it did lend better for Puss in Boots because it came out many years after Shrek 2 did. You can see so much more detail because in the actual CGI files and the CGI computer work that they did, there was so much more details they put behind it with the fur and the backgrounds and the clothing. There's so much more detail in it that you can see so much better in this than you ever could on the previous Blu Ray before it. And all of that is drastically enhanced by the HDR10 presentation, which shines through great on this. It has some brilliant whites and inky blacks without having any black crush where it goes into those areas where you lose all the details because it's too dark. It didn't have any of that, and it was nicely implemented and done on this release, even a little bit more so than, like I said, it was on Shrek. But that, again, is because this CGI had several years later of advancements that they're drawing this image from. Now, if you haven't done so yet, make sure to go down and give this video a like and a thumbs up for me. Hit that subscribe button and the bell notification. That way you never miss out on any of this exclusive content that you're only gonna find here on my YouTube channel. I do a ton of these early or exclusive reviews that no one else does, that you're always gonna wanna make sure you're subscribed so you never miss out on any of this. So make sure to go down there, give this video a like and a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button and the bell notification. Now the audio on this is another improvement. It does have English DTS-X on it and DTS HD Master Audio 7.1. Now the English DTS-X is where I really enjoyed it. Now I obviously have a receiver that does DTS-X as well as Dolby Atmos, and that's what my home theater setup has. And I did a review on that actually previously here on the YouTube channel on how to get a DTS-X Dolby Atmos reference quality home cinema setup, basically on a budget. And that's a video you'll want to check out if you haven't dived into getting yourself a nice home cinema setup. But as far as the audio quality on this wise, it was a nice improvement over the previous Blu Ray. I really enjoyed the DTS-X. It actually added a lot of movement around the room. Overheads were used nicely. It filled the room nicely where the audio was constantly coming around you to where you didn't feel like it was just coming from one angle at a time. They did a good job moving it around with the DTS-X, which is where I feel like DTS-X and Dolby Atmos with those 3D audio effects really, if used properly, make you feel like you're kind of just sitting in the middle of the movie with the characters and noises and background noises happening all around you, which is really an immersive viewing and adds to that viewing and listening experience that makes you feel like the movie's a whole new thing. And I thought for Puss in Boots it was nicely done. Shrek 2, as I talked about, it was okay on it. I did enjoy it. But I actually think in Puss in Boots, they went another level and did a nice enhancement to that, which will be reflected in my review score later on as well here. But I did enjoy the audio mix on this. Now you do get audio mixes in Spanish and French, and you also get subtitles in those. You also get subtitles in English for this release. Now to show you what you get in this, I really do like these slip covers. I think Universal's doing a really nice job with these. The embossing on them and the colors on them is real nice. It says Puss in Boots on the side here. Then on the back, it actually has a different artwork than what's on the inside of the case. They're just slightly different on here, but it does include a digital movies code through Movies Anywhere. So if you want to use that, it does have that with it as well. Now, when you get inside here, you do get the original Blu Ray release. So you do get that original 2011 Blu Ray release. It is not the new scan put onto the Blu Ray. This is the original Blu Ray release. So you do get all the special features that were contained on the Blu Ray release, and then obviously the ones they put on the 4K. So you've got an option to get to both of them. Though the 4K disc, it is 100% region free, and your Blu Ray disc is 100% region free. So no matter where you live worldwide, you can watch both of these without any playback issues, though the 4K is really where it's at. I was really impressed with the amount of detail they were able to draw from the computer imagery. And like I said, this is really the premier way that you're going to be able to watch Puss in Boots that I don't think there will be anything else that they will ever be able to do to draw any more life out of this. Now, if after you get done watching my reviews of any of these releases that I'm testing and analyzing here today, as always, I post the Amazon links to buy your copies directly in a pinned comment in the comment section below and in the description section right below this video. When you hit that arrow, it opens up and it has all the links listed out down there. It also has some of my home theater equipment and shelving that I use for storing my 4Ks and Blu-rays. But all of those are always linked down below. So if you want to buy any of these releases, make sure to go down and use those links I've posted in the description section and as a pinned comment in the comment section below. They never cost you anything extra. It's always on sale for the same prices everywhere, but those links do help to support this YouTube channel just a tiny bit. But that's always at no extra cost to you. Now, talking about the downside of Puss in Boots, as I mentioned, because the CGI obviously comes from that 2011 era, there is some slight blocking and digital noise that you'll notice in some very few scenes in the backgrounds. And I took some of those screenshots above and I've showed some of those along the way, though you have to really be looking hard and paying attention for them. But they are something that I notice when I sit down and I'm doing all the testing and analysis and pulling the data off of the disc, that I can really see those depths and details in those background images. Because of the limitations of the CGI, some of the CGI just has some very slight blocking in the background and digital noise that you'll notice. Every once in a while when the characters are moving super fast, you'll just see a little bit if you pay really close attention. It doesn't necessarily mean that Universal did something wrong for this 4K Ultra HD release because it was present on the previous Blu-ray release as well. So the Blu-ray release, you just didn't notice it as much because you're only dealing with 1080 pixels, 1080p, versus a 4K image, upscaled 4K, where it brings so much more that you can see those details. So you do notice some of that just slightly more, but I'm being super nitpicky when I point that out, that digital noise and slight blocking, it's very brief, very random throughout it. It doesn't ruin the experience. And I'll take the upgrade in the audio and the visual quality overall, even though it has that slight limitation because of the CGI from the time period. This really is the best I've ever seen Puss in Boots look, and it really was just an enjoyable viewing experience. Now getting to some more of my testing and analysis here. For my rough average bitrate on this for the 4K Ultra HD disc, you were looking at roughly about 63 megabits per second. It was healthy, it wasn't strong and a high average bitrate, but it was healthy and pretty consistent throughout. There was only some small dips here and there. It pretty consistently hung around there. So it was one of those things that I think that just the limitations with what I said from that CGI, there's only so much data that's even available to pull from, which is the same similar thing that I encountered with the Shrek 2 release. But overall, this was such a nice improvement over the previous Blu-ray. It was a worthy addition into my collection, and my kids loved watching it. They thought the colors, and my wife did too. Honestly, the HDR10 implementation with the wider color gamut really enhanced this film. Just made it a big upgrade over the Blu-ray in that sense alone. Now getting to my review score for Puss in Boots on 4K Ultra HD from DreamWorks and Universal Studios, this gets an excellent 9.2. It is a good release. I enjoyed it. It is the best, as I said, that Puss in Boots has ever looked, and that I truly think it ever will look because of the limitations to the CGI. I know I've said that a lot, but it's because when I did my Shrek 2 review, it seems like a lot of people don't understand the limitations behind the CGI, and it's something that I had to explain quite a lot. So I just wanted to make sure that that was understood. This is an excellent release. I highly recommend it to buy and add to your collection because this is one of those that there's just nothing else they can draw from to make it look any better. This is the best that Puss in Boots I really think is ever going to look. Next up, we've got Invaders from Mars. Now this is the classic 1953 sci-fi film, and this was directed by William Cameron Menzies, and he really did kind of ahead of its time sci-fi classic that really is one of those films that it will surprise you if you've never seen it. It does have one of those sci-fi stories that, I mean, there's some really creepy things in it in a good way. They give you those creeped out feelings, and just along the way it has some of this good writing, and the way he filmed it with the colors and the way like the rooms kind of fade in an odd way behind the characters just really sets you off the entire film in a odd creepily vibe, which is really well done for a film that came out in 1953. Now, big shout out and thank you to Ignite Films. This is their first 4K Ultra HD limited edition release. And they reached out to me and sent this to me early for review so I could dive into it, do all my exclusive testing and analysis and review this for all of you. Now I will tell you, for Ignite Films' first 4K Ultra HD release, when I did receive this, I was pretty impressed. Now it did come with a nice little pin, which you can kind of see here, which I did like that little touch. I like getting like little collectors, things like this. And there's some other little hidden touches that I'll touch on here when we get into the unboxing here to share with you kind of things that come in this limited edition set as well. But it is #1 in their collection, and I think for their first one, they did some very nice things in this release. Now for this new 4K Ultra HD release, it is a native 4K 2160p, and it was created from a new 4K scan of the original camera negative, and it was fully restored with a new HDR10 color grading, which drastically is what makes such a huge improvement for this film. Because you see, what the director did, William Cameron Menzies, is he had so many like neon and vibrant colors, as you're noticing in the screenshots that are pulled from the 4K disc here. As I said before, those are the native images pulled directly from the disc. It does have a nice healthy layer of film grain on it. You can see the film grain consistently throughout the entire thing. So they did not DNR it out, though I will say for a film that came out in 1953, you do have to keep in mind it is pretty heavy on the film grain because of the time period and the original camera negative. So just keep that in mind, but it does lend to the depth on this 4K, especially with that HDR10 implementation, going from like those bright greens when he's sleeping in bed and it's just the bright green shining on his face, and then you've got the blues, and then there's some purples and some pinks and some just varying shades throughout it that were done so well that shine through great with the new color grading and the HDR10 implementation that really made Invaders from Mars look the best that I've ever seen it look. I mean, the restoration work they did on this, there's a special feature on this that touches on what they did, going back to the original film elements and working with those to get the different color elements, to get them to appear correctly, all of the damage. It really is impressive work for the first release from Ignite Films, and I'm really surprised. For their first release, this is a way to step out on the market and is one of those that is an impressive for a 1953 film. How much better they really were able to make this look, that when you see what it used to look like, wow, did Invaders from Mars just look absolutely horrible and poor. I mean, the tears, the rips, the speckles, the smudges, the colors just not matching and just looking horrible overall. They really did a nice job with this, that it is an impressive release for a film from 1953. Now, touching on the audio here, this does have English DTS HD Master Audio 2.0. Now, again, I'm going to reference that it's 1953 because it is important to understand for that time period the limitations they had with the audio and things like that. It's a very self-contained audio mix. It doesn't move around the room because it is a 2.0 mix. There is drastic fluctuations because of the time period. Now, this is still the best I've ever heard Invaders from Mars ever sound. The restoration they did on the audio and on the video obviously makes it look the best it ever has. But remember, when I'm reviewing these and comparing these to other 4Ks, that's kind of how this all comes together. Because it's a film that's from that time period, it does have those limitations with the audio, which means you will have times you'll turn it up, you'll turn it down. There's times where there's some sharp audio sounds, and that's just because of the time period. You have to understand, if you've only ever watched films that are recent releases and you get into a film like Invaders from Mars from 1953, it is limited in those areas and will not sound like a modern film. It's never going to, no matter how much work they do. There's just only so much they can draw from and so much work they can do because those fluctuations existed because of the mics they used and the recording devices they used, and then obviously the film that it was put on and the damage to those. Those are what affect drastically what we see and what we hear, that can only be basically fixed or restored so much. Now, this does have subtitles on it in English, plus 5 other options that are available on this for you to choose from as well. And the film is very fast paced. It runs about 80 minutes. It has to do with basically the boy waking up in bed after his father and him have been looking at the stars through his telescope, and he sees a ship crash basically out in his backyard. And basically then his dad goes to investigate, and things start happening around the town that are very creepy. And I'm not going to give everything away because some of it's really just kind of well done even for today's standards, that I think that this film holds up well in a lot of it. Now, I will say later on in the film, once you get to actually inside the Martian ship, that's where it does get to a little bit more of the 1950s hokiness for sci-fi. But up to that point, my wife was really surprised, and she'd never seen it, how well written and how well acted it was. I mean, the actors in it do a great job selling the eeriness of basically the Martian invasion and what they were doing to some of the inhabitants of the town, and just the kind of creepiness of that. Really is an exciting sci-fi film that I think is a great classic, that if you like sci-fi classics, you're not going to want to miss out on this one. Now, showing you what you get in this. You do get this nice slip cover. Now, this is, as I said, a limited edition set. It does say #1 on it because this is their first release. Then on the back, it talks about the release, talks about all the bonus features, that it is a brand new 4K restoration of the film, talks about all the different things. It has the trailers in there, interviews, featurettes. There's a huge plethora of special features you get included in this, so that was a nice addition that I really did enjoy, and I dived into a bunch of these that really showed how much work they did on this, and that's where you'll really appreciate how much work was put into this, especially for their first 4K release. Again, I can only say I was really surprised at the amount of work that was put into this. Then when you get here, you do have your regular 4K case, which I really do like. I kind of talked about this a lot recently, but I like when these studios use regular 4K cases as opposed to kind of going the Criterion Collection clear plastic case. I just like that the 4K cases match where they say 4K on them. So I did like that they kept it this way, so that way it kind of goes with all the rest of the 4K releases. But when you get inside here, you do get your 4K Ultra HD disc. It is region free. And you do have in here a really nice collector's booklet that talks about this restoration and this release. It goes into all the different things showing about the release, showing about the work they did on it, all of the problems that were inherent in the film. It goes into a bunch of things that are talked about in the special features, about the director, about Cinecolor, about the issues with the Cinecolor, which is what I was talking about, where they had to work on the color to get it restored correctly to what it was originally intended to look like, all the issues with the different prints. Overall, I thought this booklet was a really, really well done booklet, and it's actually pretty darn surprisingly thick for this release. So for their booklet wise as well, again, another one up that they did a good job on the booklet that's included in this release as well. Now getting to a little bit more of my testing and analysis here, for the rough average bitrate for this, I was really surprised at how healthy and strong it was for this release. You're looking at a rough average bitrate of roughly 82 megabits per second, and it was pretty stable and consistent throughout the entire release. It was very surprising at how nicely and well done it was on that sense too. So again, another good job for this release. Now, there is something I want to touch on here. Because of the time period, and because, as always, I'm comparing this to the image presentation from other 4K restorations around that time period and things like that, there is still a lot of damage still present that is unfixable. As you'll see when you're watching it on the sides of the image, there's still some lines and rips that still appear there that are just basically so bad that you should have seen what it looked like before they restored it, type of a thing. They did a great job with this, but again, it is a film of the time period. 1953 was a long time ago. So that is where what they did with this, it's an absolutely impressive release. For this release of Invaders from Mars from 4K Ultra HD, this gets a very good 8.8. I highly recommend the release, buying it and adding it to your collection. It was so close to getting into the 9s, but as I've always said, anything in the 8s and 9s is always highly recommended to buy and add to your collection, because they are films that you need to have, you need to watch, and you need to experience. This is one of those you need to experience and see. It'll surprise you, for a film of its time period, how well and creepily some of the scenes are throughout it that really give you that chill of a chilling kind of sci-fi horror movie that for the time to this day still holds up. A lot of those scenes really, really are well done. And as I said, coming from my wife's point of view, who had never seen the film ever, she was really surprised as well. She was like, wow, this is really engaging. And she ended up watching the entire film with me because she was so entertained and engaged by it that she didn't want to miss any of it. So that's one of those interesting things where I said, coming from someone's side that has never seen the film like her, this was her first time watching it. She really enjoyed it. And an 8.8 is a very good review score for this release. It's just because of the audio and the inherent things from that time period that just simply can't get fixed. It can't get up into the 9s simply because those things are always going to be present on it. But this is highly recommended that you buy and add this to your collection, because this is a great first release from Ignite Films. I am excited to see what they do next on 4K Ultra HD. This is the way I want to see these classic movies restored. I love the book in it and everything that came with this. This is a great entry, and this is one you're going to have in your collection. Now, because it's limited edition, keep in mind there's only so many of these that are being printed. But this is a great release. I definitely recommend this one. Now, if you haven't done so yet, make sure to give this video a like and a thumbs up for me. Hit that subscribe button and the bell notification. That way you never miss out on any of this early or exclusive video content that I only release here on my YouTube channel. Next up, we've got My Best Friend's Wedding. Now, this is the 25th anniversary edition from Sony Columbia Pictures, and this is the 1997 Julia Roberts rom-com romantic comedy classic movie. And it is a really funny movie. It's well written, it's well directed, but it's a drastically different type of comedy with romance in it. And the reason I say the romance aside, because it's more or less a story of Julia Roberts' character finding out that her best friend is getting married, all of a sudden realizing she has some feelings for him, or thinks she has some feelings for him, and trying to break up his wedding by going to his wedding but acting like his friend. And it's really well done. There's some really good comedic beats. It's a very enjoyable film that I really enjoy. Now, it's one of my wife's absolutely favorite films. She's watched this dozens of times. So I had her watch this with me, and I had her give me her opinion of the restoration. I obviously went through and did all my exclusive testing on this. And this is one of those films that she loves. We've had it on Blu Ray, DVD, VHS. We've experienced it on all the iterations of home video. Now, I will say for the 25th anniversary, it did deserve a 4K Ultra HD release. And this is a native 4K 2160p. And this does have Dolby Vision and HDR10 on it. And they lend nicely and do have nice improvements over the previous Blu-ray release. Now, as you're noticing the native images pulled from the disc that you're seeing above, there is some fluctuations we're going to touch about here as we go through this, but it does have an English Dolby Atmos mix on this, as well as an English Dolby True HD 7.1 and a DTS HD Master Audio 5.1, plus several other languages and audio options on this. Now, the audio was a big, healthy improvement over all the previous home video releases. Now, for the Dolby Atmos though, I'm not going to say it's reference quality because it's not, and it doesn't really move it around the room a whole lot. Now, there are some areas where you kind of feel more background and slight above and things like that, but it's just not an amazing Dolby Atmos mix. I do think it's a healthy improvement over all the iterations on home video before, the Blu-rays, the DVDs, and so on, but it's just not one of those amazing implementations of Dolby Atmos. I just think it's a nice audio upgrade in general. So it was nice in that sense. Now, you do get subtitles in English, French, and Spanish on this, so you do get those options. Now, going back to the image presentation, this is where I had some issues. Now, my wife always pointed out that when we watched the Blu-rays and things like that, it was always a softer image presentation on those. A lot of the filters and lenses and things they used for a lot of romantic comedies was to give it a hazy kind of dreamlike appearance in some of those scenes. Those I already knew about going into this because I've seen this film numerous times. Though I will say on this release on 4K, there were some other scenes that were soft that did seem to appear to have some slight DNR applied in them. They're very brief and they're random throughout it. Just very short, very brief. All of a sudden everybody looks really waxy for a second. Then it goes right back to having healthier looking film grain and being a nice image. And then there's the plague that's always existed on my best friend's wedding. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So on Blu-ray, on DVD, it's always existed where some of the scenes, Julia Roberts' character and some of the actors and actresses in it will get like a ghostly grayish skin tone appearance. Now, it's always existed in all iterations of home video where they almost get like ghostly grayish, and it just their skin does not look natural. It's very noticeable. My wife's always noticed it. I've always noticed it. It's still present on this 4K, which what that leads me to believe is that even though they did a brand new 4K scan for this native 4K and things like that, I think it's on the original camera negatives that they're scanning this from. I think there was something inherently wrong with how it was done that causes them to get that like ghostly grayish almost appearance to their skin tones. And then the next scene, it'll go right back to looking healthy and normal, and then there'll be a scene. And it's always been that way. It fluctuates throughout the entire film. And that's where I've always had an issue with the look of My Best Friend's Wedding because of that. Because no matter what home video iteration has ever existed, I've always noticed it. And I noticed it on this, and it's still present on this. It's not something that's ever been fixed, which I kind of thought for the 4K they were going to fix it, but I guess that's just something that's always going to be there. And this is the best it's ever looked, though, like I said, you'll notice all those different things I was kind of mentioning, fluctuating in and out, film grain there, then 1 second it'll be slightly DNR'd out, then it'll be right back, and then you'll have a soft scene where, because of the lenses and camera lenses, it's intentionally soft, but then all of a sudden you'll get to another scene where their skin tone turns that like grayish, ghostly white. So it is a more kind of uneven presentation in my opinion. It's not a reference quality release. It is just one of those that's an upgrade over the previous Blu-ray release. So that is a nice improvement, but it takes a lot of the inherent things that were wrong with the Blu-ray release and carries them over into the 4K. You just get more detail in the picture. There is more life because of the Dolby Vision and HDR10. Now between both of them, I really didn't notice any difference between the HDR10 and Dolby Vision. They both had very similar presentations. Same issues existed on both the Dolby Vision and the HDR10. So neither one had a one-up on that, but it's just always kind of been one of those films. It's an enjoyable film. I did enjoy it. I think there's some scenes that had some incredible detail where you can see the incredible details on their faces and their skins. And then there's scenes where there's not incredible detail. So that's where I said it's just kind of an uneven presentation overall. Now the audio mix though did add a nice level of clarity to it that was missing on the previous Blu-ray releases. A lot of the background noise you can hear in that Dolby Atmos now. You can also hear the music a whole lot better, cleaner, crisper. So in that sense, that Dolby Atmos did enhance those areas where you could just hear things a whole lot better. It's the same thing for the Dolby UHD 7.1. Same thing applies there. It just sounded so much clearer and crisper than any of the releases of this before. And the whole big thing about My Best Friend's Wedding is the music really is what kind of makes the film. And you'll know what I'm meaning if you've ever seen this film. My wife always talks about that she has this on CD and had it on cassette tape and things like that, the soundtrack to this. It has some really good nostalgic like soundtrack to it that's got some great songs on it, and they sound the best they ever have on this 4K. So for that sense of it, it's worth the upgrade and buying this for that sense alone. Now showing you what you get in this release. It does come with a really nice slipcover. I do like that it came with a slipcover. It says My Best Friend's Wedding. You do get a digital movie code from Movies Anywhere. It's a 4K digital movie code minus your special features. This does have all the special features present from all the previous Blu-ray and home video iterations, though I will say some of the special features are in SD. So you do get SD and HD quality special features. They're all contained on the 4K Ultra HD disc because you just get a 4K and your digital copy code in this, which is why the price-wise of this is quite a bit less. But it is a nice set, and it does say your Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos on it as well. Now, when you get inside here, you'd have your digital copy code here, and this is your 4K Ultra HD disc. I did like the cover art they used on this. This is 100% region-free, so no matter where you live worldwide, you can always import it through that Amazon link I've posted in the description section and as a pinned comment below. It'll ship anywhere worldwide. If you live in the US, obviously, you're going to want to click on that link down below. But it does have an actual pressed disc. It is not one of those blue manufactured discs that do not look normal. They're not the regular manufactured. This is a pressed disc, so you don't have to worry about that. It does look very nice, and I do think Sony did a good job. Now, getting to some more of my testing here, getting to my rough average bitrate. This had a rough average bitrate of right around 73 megabits per second. I will say there was fluctuations throughout the film, and I did notice some of those fluctuations made a difference to where you would have more detail to less detail, especially in some of those areas I was paying attention to where I said it kind of looked like some of the film grain was slightly scrubbed, where it's just a slightly more DNR'd scene it almost appeared as. That's where you would notice dips in the actual bitrate as well. So those kind of coincided as I noticed along the way, and it's kind of an interesting thing. Now the 73 is decent average bitrate for it, but it is just one of those, it just has some inherent issues that are always present on previous releases that just seem to have just continued over into this one. And like I said, because of the Dolby Atmos, it did have more clarity and crispness to the sound, especially with the music. That was a nice, appreciable upgrade. But don't expect it to be one of those things that moves the sound around so much. It's a nice improvement, but it's just not a reference quality release. Now, getting to my review score for My Best Friend's Wedding. It's a good release. I enjoyed it. It just had some of those inherent issues, as you noticed probably from those screenshots above. It's just not one of those I can say is just absolutely the best release I've ever seen. For My Best Friend's Wedding, this gets a review score of an 8.7. It's good. It's a good release that I enjoyed, and it's one my wife really enjoyed. We're glad we have it on 4K Ultra HD. We have fun watching it, and we're glad that it is an upgrade in all of the other areas. I just wish they would have fixed all those little nitpicky things I've always noticed on My Best Friend's Wedding that have always existed. I just wish they would have spent more time kind of fixing those, but I guess this is sometimes what you get on some of these releases when they're not as maybe as high a profile release. But this is still the best way to view My Best Friend's Wedding. So an 8.7 is still a very good review score, and it is recommended over the previous Blu-ray, over the previous DVD. It's still a big upgrade that you'll enjoy. I still thought they could have fixed all those little nitpicky things I've noticed over the years that I just kind of wish wouldn't have carried over. I just thought they could have done a better job in some of those instances. If you decide to get this, make sure to use those links I've posted in the description section and as a pinned comment in the comment section below. Those take you straight out to Amazon. Never cost you a penny more, but that does help to support this YouTube channel just a little bit. So make sure if you decide you're going to buy this now to click through those links down below. It's just a release. I was expecting so much more out of it, but when I did all my testing and analysis, I kind of saw the issues that were present on it. But now you know about them, so that way you won't be disappointed. You'll enjoy it knowing what you're going to get out of this release. Next up, we got the 1988 movie, The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. And this is one of those like quirky, Terry Gilliam directed, I don't know, fantasy, action, adventure comedies. And it's really hard to put this in kind of just one genre. Because Terry Gilliam's films, if you've ever seen any of them, I mean, I recently reviewed the 12 Monkeys 4K Ultra HD release from Arrow Video. Now, since they've done the disc replacement for that, I really enjoyed that release. It was a stellar release now that they've done the disc replacement. But if you haven't checked out that review yet, I did talk about the issues initially when it was actually basically first coming out. I got that in about 2 weeks early for review. And that release I did enjoy. I love 12 Monkeys. I think it's one of Terry Gilliam's basically favorite films of mine of his that he's done. And I really enjoyed that film. Well, if you haven't checked out that review, that one's available on 4K, and that is a review you're going to want to check out if you haven't watched that. It's a great time travel movie. Well, this is another Terry Gilliam film, and his films are always very chaotic and have different like references to life, done with scenes that are kind of over the top, like either comedic or exaggerated. I always think of the scene at the beginning, towards the beginning of Baron Munchausen, when he tells basically one of the guys that's with him in his camaraderie saying, go and run and get this bottle of wine. And the guy sits there with his big muscular legs and he walks up with these balls attached to it, these steel balls, and he takes them off and he starts running. He digs a hole like, I don't know, 4 feet down before he takes off, and he's going so fast because his legs are so muscular. Everything's done so over the top in Terry Gilliam's films, and you kind of have to go into it understanding that. He uses a lot of metaphors in his films for things, and he'll use like a stylistic choice of showing someone with a huge head and kind of to show off kind of that they're very arrogant or things like that. So it's kind of done very over the top, tongue-in-cheek, and you have to go into it understanding that. Now, when this film originally came out, it was very poorly received. A lot of people didn't like it. A lot of people didn't understand it. A lot of people didn't even give it a chance. They just kind of bashed it. Reviewers bashed it at the time, and it's grown in cult status over the years. This brand new Criterion Collection release on 4K Ultra HD does have nice, healthy improvements in the image. Now, I'll tell you why it makes a difference on what they did with this. Now, this is a native 4K 2160p, and it was created from a 4K wet-gate scan of the original 35mm camera negatives. Now, it's interesting because Sony Pictures did the actual wet-gate scan and did the work along with Criterion Collection. So basically then after they did that, the restoration and the brand new color grading was approved by the original director, Terry Gilliam himself. So all of that lends to why this has a more vibrant color palette throughout it, and really has one of those more vibrant colors now for a Terry Gilliam film because of the Dolby Vision and HDR10 implementations on this release. Now, between the two of those, the Dolby Vision does shine through as the best way to watch this film. The HDR10 did have a variance on it, and I will say the HDR10 presentation on this was about 10% not as brilliant with the colors and things like that as what the Dolby Vision had. So I did enjoy the Dolby Vision quite a bit more, and I'd say if I had to pick a number, it'd be right at about that 10% mark difference. So if you do have Dolby Vision, you'll enjoy it just a little bit more than the HDR10 presentation. And it is an over-the-top film. If you've noticed in those images I'm putting up above, it's got a very fantasy element vibe of basically Baron Munchausen telling the story of basically his life and elements of his life kind of through childlike eyes where everything is so over the top, so over exaggerated, like what I explained about the guy sitting and running in place for forever and digging the hole down. Everything is done very, very over the top, comedically, in a fantasy element. If you go into it with that sense, if you've ever seen Time Bandits, which I am hoping now that we've gotten this, that we're going to get Time Bandits on 4K Ultra HD. I like that film. It's another really good Terry Gilliam one. And that one would be a great with a 4K restoration. I do think we're going to get that very soon. But if you like Time Bandits, you'll love Baron Munchausen. It is one of those that fits in with that genre, that type of a film very well. And you'll know what you're getting into and you'll know what you're expecting if you've seen Time Bandits before. Now, along with all the restoration, the work they did with the wetgate scan and everything, this did get a new restoration on the audio mix. And it does get an English DTS HD Master Audio 5.1, and it does sound really good. It was clear, it was crisp, you could hear everything, the sound effects, the music, everything was well done on it. I really didn't have any complaints with the audio mix at all. I thought it was a very nice addition to this release and sounded good throughout the entire film. Now you do get English subtitles on this release as well. Now here's where we're going to talk about the downside of this release. When I went through all my testing and was analyzing the image, there is still some blots, some speckles, some smudges that basically are still present throughout it. It just wasn't handled well, and it's always kind of been one of those films when it originally released, it was a rougher film. And it always had issues with some of the special effects, and you could see blots and smudges, and you could see basically that some of the paintings behind them had blots or smudges, and it just kind of, I don't know, overall had a rougher look as a film. This is the best it's ever looked, and it's the best I've ever seen the film look. But some of those blots and smudges and things like that, they're still present on it. So some of those things just didn't get completely taken out altogether. And I will say it does have some slight digital noise and digital artifacting still on this as well with this new 4K. Seems like when they did the 4K scan and all of that work, that it just caused some digital noise and artifacting to be present on this that you can see kind of more so in the backgrounds behind the characters. You'll notice some slight like digital noise, slight small digital blocking on some of like the stage. If you notice when they first start off at the beginning of the film and it's showing the stage and they're kind of making fun of Baron Munchausen before he actually shows up, and basically you can see in the stage behind them there's some digital artifacting. There's some scenes later on in the sky, you'll see some digital artifacting, and then later on when you actually see Uma Thurman's character, you'll see some slight digital noise and artifacting there as well. It's not so heavy that I'm going to say it ruins the picture. It doesn't. It's still a really great presentation, and it's the best this film has ever looked, and to be honest with you, I'm surprised it even got this 4K restoration at all. I don't think we're ever going to get anything better than what this 4K Ultra HD release is, so I'm thankful for that. But as always, I want to point out the things I encounter when I go through my testing, because I'll always be upfront and honest with all of you about what I experience and what I see when I go through these. So some of those things, they're just inherent in this release, but it does affect the review score a little bit because some of those things could have been worked out and ironed out a little bit better by Criterion and Sony when they were working on this. It just seems like how they did it, maybe it was slightly rushed in those areas, and that's why that digital noise is still kind of present. It could have kind of been worked out a little bit better there. But again, the image does look stellar for this release because I'm really surprised it even got a 4K release. So it's a stellar image presentation for how horrible this thing looked way back when it was originally released anyways. So keep that in mind. We're talking varying degrees here. I'm amazed at how good this looks considering how horrible it looked in all iterations before. Now showing you what you get in this. You do get their basically clear 4K cases. I do like these cases from Criterion better than their like cardboard boxes they've been releasing 4K releases in, like the Wall-E release. I'm not a fan of those cardboard boxes at all. So I would prefer it in this clear plastic case. It does say Baron Munchausen on the side. It says 1166. That's the number for this one. Talks about it in here, talks about the restoration, special features, how it was all supervised and approved by Terry Gilliam, and then the film runs 126 minutes. Now, when you get inside here, you do get these really cool artworks on the disc. You get your 4K Ultra HD disc, your Blu Ray, then you get your little booklet poster type thing here. And then obviously you have all your special features and then your other Blu-ray. And it has artwork behind each of the discs as well. So they did a good job with the release, giving us different artwork on each of the discs, making it clear what each of them are. So I do think Criterion did a good job with that. Now getting into the little booklet here, it does fold out. It talks about the cast and the restoration. And it has some of the kind of like artwork and things listed on the booklet as it folds out in little posters. And it goes through kind of like just talking about the actual film itself and the restoration that went into this. And I do like this, though I would say I would have preferred it to actually have been a booklet with like a staple on the side where you can go through the pages. I'm not as much a fan when Criterion releases these and these like you saw, I gotta like unfold it and it's like this giant thing like this. I would much rather it had been in like a book form where it's stapled and actually pages you scroll through, but that's just me being nitpicky. It is nice that we at least get these in here that talk about it, so you have a little something to read about the film. Now, for a film that was never treated kindly and looked so poor when it originally released back in 1988, I'm amazed, like I said, that this got this. It looks good, but it's not perfect and it's not a reference quality release. I have seen a lot of misinformation just to let you know about this release. You'll probably notice it yourself. But there's a lot of misinformation with a lot of people that review things. It seems like just they don't know how to test things. They don't know how to analyze them. They don't know how to see things or pay attention to things. I don't know. But I'm always here to set the record straight on this, and I'll always be upfront and honest with you with what I see when I go through all my testing. For this one, it gets a review score of a 9.0. It's not perfect. It's not one of those that's reference quality up at a 9.9. Heck, I've seen people giving this 10s or 5 out of 5. I don't know what they're watching. I mean, honestly, it's not a reference quality release. You can't give something like this a 10. You can't be up in that area. I mean, we're talking that's rarefied air up there. Yes, this looks amazingly good for how horrible it looked originally. It's a 9. It's a solid 9. I'm very happy with this release. I think Criterion did a great job with this release. Other than those nitpicky things, like I said, with the digital noise and artifacting that they could have fixed. They could have done the work to make sure those didn't appear after they did their scan and was working on it on the computers and things. They could have taken the time to make sure some of that digital noise and artifacting didn't exist. And that's where it affects the review score, because it was something that is not present on the film itself. It's something that was not done correctly when they were actually restoring the film, because they didn't take the extra little time it needed for that. But it is a great release at 9.0. Again, the best it's ever looked. I highly recommend adding this one to your collection, especially if you like Terry Gilliam's films. You cannot miss out on having this on 4K. It is a revelation for the adventures of Baron Munchausen. And I really mean a revelation, because it is one of those I never in my lifetime thought would get a 4K restoration because of how poorly it was received at the time in 1988 when it came out. It got torn apart by critics. It has grown in cult status drastically because people more now understand Terry Gilliam's style of filmmaking that they did not understand back in 1988 or didn't want to understand. And that is why I have enjoyed him as a filmmaker himself, because I understand what he does. I like his style of more artsy filmmaking fantasy elements that I think is kind of cool in and of itself that nobody else was really doing. It's his own style, and I appreciate that he did things differently and he did things his own way. And that's why I like it. Just like I talked about with 12 Monkeys and Time Bandits, and I could go on, I do think Terry Gilliam is a very unique and he is a respected filmmaker in his own realm. And he should be appreciated for that reason alone. And this is one of those films you need to watch more than once. Don't sit down and watch this once and say, it was a little out there, I didn't understand this, I didn't understand that, characters are kind of comedic and over the top, I don't know what I thought about it. You gotta watch it more than once. Terry Gilliam's films cannot be watched one time. They are required to be watched at least twice, sometimes 3 times, before you make a determination about what your thoughts or feelings are about his films. Because he has a lot of things, stylistic choices, art choices, in the films that are meant to purvey or give us feelings by the background art styles or the styles of the characters and the writing or the things they say, the musical numbers. It's a very artsy type of filmmaking that Terry Gilliam went for. And that is where I applaud him for that, because he didn't stick to the same as everybody else. He tried things his own way, did his own style of filmmaking that I applaud. I'm glad to have this on 4K Ultra HD. I do think it is one you should add to your collection. I do think it is one you should give a chance. I think you should check out his other films. Heck, 12 Monkeys is another one you need to check out on 4K. I told you I have that review already available on my YouTube channel. You can watch that now. That is one I suggest checking out of his films as well. But this release gets a very solid and superb 9.0. You need to watch this. This 4K is the only way I recommend watching this film. Now, if you enjoyed all the hard work and time I put into all of these images above, pulling all the native data off of all of these discs, doing all this testing and analyzing for all of you here on my YouTube channel, make sure to join my Collectors VIP Club. That is the best way possible to show your support of these videos and this YouTube channel. I'm not sponsored and paid by anybody. The only way I can always continue to create all this content here on my YouTube channel is through all of you, my viewers' support. And when you join my Collectors VIP Club, you get a ton of extra little perks. There's some extra video content I release on there. Every few months I give some special video content only for my VIP Club members. You get a special name badge next to your name, so when you comment, it shows you're a Collectors VIP Club member of In Search of Physical Media, so that way you stand out. There's also a recognition tab here on my YouTube channel right at the top. It shows that you're a Collectors VIP Club member to everybody worldwide. And I just want to say thank you to all my current VIP Club members. You really do make a difference and make it possible for me to continue creating all this content every single week here on my YouTube channel. If you want to give a super thanks, you can through the super thanks button down below as well. That's just $1 or $2 you can give on there, whatever amount you want. That goes straight back into the creation of these videos as well. But the best way possible to support this channel is always through that Collectors VIP Club. It costs you less than the price of a cup of coffee each month, but it drastically makes a difference in the creation of these videos. If you're gonna pick up and buy any of these releases that I've reviewed today, as always, I'll have all the links posted down in the description section and as a pinned comment in the comment section below. You click on those, it takes you straight out to Amazon. That's always at no extra cost to you, but it does help to support this YouTube channel just a little bit. So make sure to click through those links down there below. Make sure to start the conversation in the comment section below and let me know what of these you're excited for to get now or to buy. I always love to hear from all of you, so make sure to start the conversation in the comment section below and let me know what of these releases you're excited that I did my full reviews and analysis on and all of the testing data. Make sure to let me know what of these films are your favorites or what of these have special meanings for you. Start that conversation down there below. As always, I hope all of you truly have a blessed day, and I've always got something new and very exciting coming out very soon.